thing that I want to do is show you some photographs. And then I want you just to, when it's just about 5 of them. And then at the end of that, I want to just ask you a question, okay? So if you'll just look at these for just a moment, and hopefully the PowerPoint will act as it's supposed to. Okay, as you look at these pictures, what do you think they are feeling? What do you think they are experiencing, these individuals? What thoughts, just popcorn it, what thoughts come to your mind as emotions?
Anguish.
Anguish.
Pain.
Desperation. Pain. Fear. Overwhelmed. Sad. Yeah. Helpless. Hopeless. Heartbroken. That's helpless. It's the face of helplessness. What do I do? How do we get our clients that we see beyond this point? Because what the research shows us is that with military members, is that a small percentage of them actually, about 17%, actually suffer from depression and post-traumatic. Now believe me, I'm not minimizing that number. It's a significant number, and I'm very sympathetic with that. But what that tells me is that the other 83% are resilient. The other 83% come back to us. And yes, they still have issues that we have to address, but how do we help our clients go from this to that resiliency place? And that's what I want us to focus on. So when you think about resiliency, and I'm going to let you cheat a little bit, but what are words that come into your head? What are thoughts? We went from desperation and hopelessness and helplessness and fearful to what?
Positive coping.
Positive coping. Thank you. What else? Adaptation. What does that mean? That's a term we use in social work all the time. What's it mean?
Has good coping skills.
Finding your strength, your coping skills, using those.
Adjusting to a new environment without
making
too much
your circumstances
stress.
work for you.
Making those circumstances that you're in work for you. Finding the new norm. Wow.
Finding the what? The new normal.
The new normal. Because, and is there any right way to do that? Is there any right normal? No.
We used to call it making a way out of nowhere.
Making a way out of nowhere. Amen. As my grandmother used to say, getting blood out of a turnip. You know? just making it happen. Overcoming the odds, bouncing back. The Latin term of resilience actually means, what it literally means is being pliant. That elastic ability, quality of a substance. It doesn't mean it's not stretched. It doesn't mean it's not distorted. It doesn't mean it's not banged and beat up and misshaped. But what it means is that it comes back. And think about the clients that you work with. Okay? Here's a couple of definitions from the literature. These are in your PowerPoint. Not going to read through all of them, but the second one, what I love about that definition is it addresses what? All levels, system levels that we work with. We often think about resiliency only addressing individuals or families. But you think about communities. We're from Mississippi. Katrina hit us 10 years ago. Hit us hard. We were the epicenter. The media didn't show that. The media showed New Orleans, and I'm not minimizing what New Orleans went through, but Katrina came landfall on the Gulf Coast of Biloxi, Mississippi, in Gulfport. It was wiped out, okay? that community, if you go down there today, there's still some evidence, but as a whole, oh my goodness, they came back and were resilient and supported each other. I love that definition for that reason. So a little historical context on the research of resiliency. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I want to move on. But the initial focus for resiliency really focused on disadvantaged children. In the early 60s and 70s, it was how did children coming from these very difficult situations manage to grow up as adults and survive? How are they doing that? That was, how are they not all suffering in prison somewhere? How is that happening? And that's where the majority of the research really focused in the early 60s, 70s, and 80s. What I think is interesting is that Bernard in 1993 found that between 1/2 and 2/3 of children growing up in adverse situations do overcome the odds and do cope effectively. Adaptation. Adaptation. Second focus really shifted gears a little bit and looked at people across the lifespan. And not just at children, but people as middle adults, people as young adults, the elderly. How are we coping? How are we bouncing back at different stages in our life? And I love this, subjective meanings are critical determinants of success. What does that mean? Subjective meanings are critical determinants of success. What do you think that means? Come on, somebody talk to me.
How you interpret it?
How do you interpret your situation? Is the glass half full or the glass half empty? It's perception. Do you think that that helps people to be resilient? Is that something that we maybe need to be teaching with our folks that we work with in social work? Okay, the resiliency theory and resiliency work really looks at two factors. You have risk factors and protective factors. It's where all the resiliency work comes from. I break down here for you, and again, I'm not going to talk, I'm not going to read the PowerPoint I loved Dr. Parker's presentation at lunch because he being military base and working with him, he's exactly right. If you read from the PowerPoint, they get you. So I'm going to try to just talk you through this. But guys, risk factors. Individuals, peers, families, schools, community, and society. I want to give you a handout. Here it is, thank you. And I don't know if I'm going to have enough. If you'll take those and just take one and pass. I meant to include this in the PowerPoint, but I failed to get it in there, so I apologize. But guys, what this handout shows you is in family systems, in community, how risk factors in a family impact our individuals, but it impacts at all levels. And at all levels, we need, as we are working with individuals, families, and communities, we need to be identifying what are those risk factors or what are those protective factors. Risk factors, what do we mean by that? Anybody know? Well, how's that defined?
These are going to be like pre-event factors. So what is going on for them in their life before they have something traumatic happen?
Exactly. What puts them at risk? What can be some risk factors? And there's some examples here on your handout. What can be some risk factors for individuals?
Trauma.
Unemployment, addiction, isolation,
Social support, yeah.
poverty, illnesses, death, a disability, unexpected disability,
Lack of social support, I'm not sure.
lack of social support. These are all risk factors that we assess, okay? What are those protective factors?
If they have healthy coping skills.
What do they do? What is the reason that they are still sitting there in front of you? What is it that has gotten them to the place that they walked in your office or picked up the phone and called and asked for help? coping skill. What is that protective factor? Can it be spirituality? You bet it can.